Hello and welcome to this new tutorial. In this tutorial we are going to see how to add an FTP site on Windows Server 2019. If you have watched the previous video, we have installed FTP Server and configured it on this Windows Server 2019 machine. Now we are going to add an FTP site so that we can begin transferring files and benefiting from the FTP service. What you need for this tutorial is a local user in your server. For me, I don't have a local user on this server other than the administrator user. So what I'm going to do is go to Tools, Computer Management. So I'm going to add one here quickly. Go to Local Users and Groups, and then go to Users and add a new user here, or you can just right click on Users here and add a new user. So again, right click, New User. I'm going to give this user a username. For example, FTP User. I'm going to give it a full name, which can be John Doe, for example. And most importantly, let's give this user a password. User must not change password at next logon, and the password never expires. This is just a test user, so this doesn't really matter. So let's hit create to create the user. It looks like my password is very simple. I'm going to create one that is a little bit complicated. Now I think it's going to accept the password. So the user has now been created and it's here, FTP User. If you want to add this user to the administrators group, you can do Properties, Member of, Add, and type here Administrators. Then click Check Names and then click OK. And now this user is an administrator of this server. Click Apply and then now let's continue our tutorial. So first, let's create a folder for our FTP site. So I can go to my C partition under inetpub, and then here I can create a folder for my FTP site. I'm going to call it my FTP folder, but you can call it whatever you want, of course. Now let's look at the properties of this folder. I'm going to close this window here. So under security, if we go to users, if you want to give this group of users more permissions on this folder, you can do edit, check full control, and everything will be selected as you can see. Then click OK. Sorry, I should have selected the users group here to change the permissions. Then click OK to save, and as you can see now the users group has full control on this folder. Then click OK. Now let's create a new FTP site. So on the IIS manager, which is right here, right click on sites and choose add FTP site, which is right here. A new wizard is going to open. Give your FTP site a name. I'm going to call it my FTP site, and choose the folder you have just added in the previous step. So for the physical path, I'm going to go to C. So under C, inet pub, my FTP folder. Select it and then click OK. Then click Next. On this page, you need to determine the binding and SSL settings for your FTP site. In the IP address text field, you can leave it as all unassigned, or you can enter the IP address of your server. I'm going to choose the IP address of my server, which is 192.168.141, and leave the port to default. And since we have not configured any SSL, choose no SSL and click Next. On this page, you need to define authentication and authorization for your FTP site. We need to use basic authentication and specify specific users we added to our server. For that, we choose here basic. So make sure you check basic, and then allow access to specific roles or user groups. The users that we have created, the FTP user, which we have added to the users group. So under authorization here, the specific group is going to be users, because that's the group where FTP user belongs to. Make sure the group has read and write permissions. Then click finish to finish adding your FTP site. And you should see your new FTP site appearing right here under sites. Now let's input IP for clients to connect. So click on the FTP site you have just created, then click on Open Features. First select the FTP firewall support, then click Open Features right here on the right side, and put here the IP address of the firewall. I'm going to use the same address I used previously. Then click Apply to apply the changes. Then click OK. Now let's test our FTP site using an FTP client. We can use an FTP client such as FileZilla, which I already have it installed on my machine. So just to make sure that you understand, this FileZilla is installed on my host machine, and this is the virtual machine that has Windows Server 2019 on it. So this FileZilla client is outside of this virtual machine. So I'm going to connect from the outside to this virtual machine, and specifically to the FTP server. So let's do that. So on File, I'm going to click on Site Manager, and then try to connect FTP server. So let's do new site. I'm going to call it FTP server 2019. The host is going to be 192.168.1.41. The port is going to be 21. I'm going to leave the encryption as use explicit FTP over TLS if available, and the logon type as normal. The user is going to be FTP User that we created previously, and the password is going to be the password that we have set for this user. Then click connect to connect to the FTP server. FTP without SSL is insecure, that's why you get this prompt here, but this is just a test machine, so click OK to log on to the FTP site. And as you can see, we are connected to the remote FTP server, and by remote here I mean this virtual machine. Now let's try to upload the file to the remote server. So if I go to this location, I have some files here. So if I try to upload this file, which is a small file, it's going to get uploaded, and in successful transfers you can see that the file has been transferred. To confirm that the file has been uploaded, go back to the server and then go to the FTP site folder, and you should find the file that has been uploaded just now. So if you find it, it means that everything is working fine. So in this tutorial we have successfully configured our FTP site or our FTP server and tested connectivity and file transfer. In case your FTP server is accessed via the internet, you need to have SSL for security reasons. I hope this video has been helpful for you, and thank you for watching.